Hi everyone. We hope you are super safe and great at home.
For today, we're going to be talking about
our classmate Sophia's book called Little by Little. So I am going to be giving you a brief summary of the book Little by Little made by Sofía Rodríguez. The story of the book starts off with a young girl who is wearing a white dress, and this dress is all dirty because she has been wandering around the woods and the forest all by herself until she finds an old wrecked cabin. This cabin is said to be surrounded by mountains in a very nice green area, and also is next to a big lake called the Nameless One. While she kept looking around the cabin and the lake, she found a young man, whom she describes as tall, dirty, but also good-looking, whose name was Duke. They encounter themselves and they start a conversation in which they confront each other, but also they get to learn their names. Her name was Sarah and his name was Duke. So after their small but conflicting conversation, both of them take their separate ways. Duke gets on his truck and heads on the road back to where he came from, and Sarah keeps on wandering around in the forest all by herself, and it was getting dark. So thank God, while she kept on walking, she finds a big building that is filled with lots of persons, and she knows that she can find a room to stay there. But the curious part is that she also finds Duke there. At this point, Sarah was very confused. She just thought it was a big coincidence how she met Duke back in the cabin in the woods, and now she encountered him again in this big building filled with lots of persons. So she started asking herself questions, and she went up to the receptionist to book herself a room so that she could stay the night, but she also asked the receptionist about Duke, to which the receptionist did not talk about at all. So eventually throughout the story we can see that Sarah starts living in that building, in that apartment, let's say, permanently, and she gets to know Duke better each day because they encounter themselves in the same place where they live, because Duke also lives in that building, and they start talking about secrets about their families from balcony to balcony because their rooms were right next to each other, and feelings start to come out by Sarah's part and also by Duke's part, but it all began as a friendship at first, a pure and unique friendship. Such was the bond and their friendship they had at this point that Sarah began to leave him small notes and flowers in front of his door so that he can find them whenever he went out of his room in the mornings, and she would tell him about her day, and they would talk about the situations in their families and everything. And so was the case when one of those days Sarah was looking for a job. She was a teacher, but she was not given a teacher's job because she just didn't have the license to work as a teacher. So after Sarah failed her job interview, she kept on walking through the town, and then she sat on a bench. She was kind of disoriented when suddenly Duke was passing by on his truck, and he gave her a ride to a phone booth where she called her mother. And this is where we get to know that she comes from a rich family, where she was arranged with a marriage, which she was not at all in love with her fiance. And that is the reason why she ran away, because she wanted to run away about all the money, about all the arranged marriage situation her family was living. So when she was talking with her mother on the phone booth, we get to know a little bit about her family, how she was adopted, how she had a strict mother, a very kind father, and that she had 2 younger sisters. It must be said that Sarah loved her family, but she had made a big decision in which she was not going to move back to her family's house. So she stayed there in that town where Duke lived as well. They became closer, and then she finally got a job offer for a special needs school, to which she accepted. A year passed, and Duke and Sarah became closer than ever, and she would always be going to that same phone booth where she would call her family twice a month. Of course, Duke was the one who would always take her there. But sadly, in one of those phone calls, she receives the terrible news in which her father had died. She was very devastated, and she got very frustrated and angry that she came and she poured it all against Duke. Duke, of course, did not know how to react upon to her anger and her sadness, that all he did was stay silent, and he kept on driving all the way to the place where they met the very first time. the lake. Sarah was very confused. She left her anger and her sadness aside and she started questioning Duke of why were they there at the same place where they met, and Duke starts telling a very devastating story about his brother. Duke explains that he had lost his brother in that exact same place and that he felt guilty about it because he wasn't able to help his brother out of the situation he had got into. So, sarcastically, Duke says that he was sorry to Sarah because he did not understand the feeling that she was feeling in that moment because of losing her father. Of course, he knew because at a very young age, he suffered the pain of losing somebody so close. Sarah then understands his feeling and they talk it out, then they kiss. They have a very romantic scene at the end of this book. They stay the night at that same cabin where the lake is, and the next day, Duke proposes matrimony to Sarah and also confesses that he has cancer. So eventually Duke dies because of the same illness, but they did have the opportunity to have a child. So years pass by after Duke's death, and Sarah, her son, and her mother have a small conversation, a normal conversation on a normal day in that exact same place where Duke and Sarah had met. The cabin is not lonely anymore, abandoned. It is very pretty, and Sarah lives in it with her mother and her son. And this is how the story ends.
So, continuing with it, in such an amazing book like Little by Little, there are some things that need to be analyzed and taken up from it, right? So, one of those parts is the themes, and they're the following. Number 1, entry. So, why we chosen it? In this book, there are 2 main characters. They are Sarah and Duke. When Sarah firstly meets him, she gets impressed by his good looking, but also despite his bad humor, she little by little gets to know him better until she discovers who that person is, right? Who that man that is like calling her without saying any word. That's why we have chosen it as one of the main themes of this book. Number 2, courage. So courage takes an important role in this book. Why? Because Sarah, despite Duke's attitude about rejecting her every time they're like together, every time they meet accidentally in a place, she tries to make him fall in love with her, and she just rejects any good intention she has, right? But she does not give up, and until she finally clinch the point in which he just fall in love with her. That's why the courage that Sarah had in this book is just an amazing thing we have chosen for you. Number 3, love. And this is the principal theme of this interesting book you should read. So Sarah came from a broken family that had pushed her to get married with somebody she did not like at all. And when she fled to this unknown place where she firstly met Duke, she fell in love at first sight. And that's why we have chosen it. That's the principal theme of this book, right? And later, she makes everything and anything possible to make him fall in love with her until they finally get together and she gets something really, really important from him. Number 4, sadness. In the previous one, we saw love that we can associate with happiness, and now we see sadness, but why? So, in every single book or series or anything that involves love, right? It needs to be a balance between those things, right? To make it appealing to the reader or to the listener. So, how do we get to know this thing, right? The way they got married, it's kind of curious, peculiar, because they give Sarah a ring and also a letter in which he confesses that he has cancer. He suffers from cancer. Later on, something unexpected happen, right? And that's why she now suffers once again. But then, everything turns differently for her. Last but not least, number 5, comfort. And this is the last one, right? And why we have chosen it as the last one? Because after Sarah lived all these adventures with Duke about moving to the building, then moving to the unknown place, the lake, right, where they lived for a while together, right, because after he dies, that's something that she gets from him as his own, right? It's like the peak of love, the peak of love. So, and also the name of this boy is Duke. So the comfort she finds in his son makes her be happy.
That setting. Talking about the setting, the book Little by Little takes place with Sarah as a young woman some time ago when she was just 24 years old. The book takes place in the nameless place, which is divided into 2 sides. What is funny and crazy is that one is lit up with gladness and the other one is dark, cold. No people whatsoever, nobody going out, no movements, everything in silence. And the weather looks rainy and cold. So the book makes us think that the setting was going to be developed there. But as soon as you read the story, you realize that Sarah gets to know the second place, full of people, everybody walking by the street, and a lot of sounds, cars, and everything. So the setting continues being taken there as soon as you go and read the chapters or the story, and you see that is the time, or that is the place where Sarah and Duke spent most of their time. It is also important to show off that the book places the story in a time when no technological communication was allowed yet. Guess what? We have a telephone. Was a luxury thing since only rich families had the opportunity to get it. For the rest, to make a phone call required to walk miles, to drive minutes or even hours to make it happen. And that is what happened to Sarah with Duke by her side, as she had to use a public telephone as many times as she could just to communicate to her mom, her beautiful mom. Another important fact of the setting is the way Duke and Sarah spent their time together. They just didn't use any device or any technological device to communicate to one another. They just spend their time talking to each other or sharing experiences, and that is how the time passes by. And at the end, the writer places the setting in the same place where Sarah met Duke. Now it is cool, it is dark, but shiny enough to continue looking at the sky or to continue thinking about him. And this is the setting. Now let's go with the moral lesson from the book. It is important and necessary to take out this from the book so that we can get to know the meaning or what the writer was trying to say with the whole book. So the lesson that we have is let your heart love and be loved. Why? Because if you don't know how to love, if you don't know the meaning of love, you are the weak person, because loving is just for brave people. Even though it hurts, because it hurts, just love and sell yourself, give yourself to others. So I want to recall a phrase that Sarah said. She said, I'm still picking up my pieces. And if you are still picking up your pieces from something that hurt you or something that it's still taking over you, just make it happen. Let them away and get rid of them. Just let your heart be melted by the beautiful creation you have around you. Maybe the night sky, the stars, trees, the wind, the weather, maybe one special friend, maybe your boyfriend, maybe your girlfriend, your sister, your teachers, your dear students, maybe your pets, or your family. And you can say, but why the family? Why the family if Sarah runs away from them? And yes, that is true, but surprise, surprise. At the end, Sarah got together with her family, especially with her mom. She was the only one that was next to her at the end of the book. Now, her mom and Sarah, and also her son, Sarah's son, whose name was Duke. So, there are always going to be problems in life, and family is always going to be there as well, right? But it depends on you if you let them affect you or not. No matter what, focus your mind on what others need more than what you probably might need, or something that you might really need. Just be happy and love. That's all for us. Thank you.